My daughter's email said, "Don't come to my wedding watch through livestream, okay," and ended with a careless LOL. My breath caught, but decades of sacrifice kept my hands steady on the mug. Instead of begging, I opened my contract folder and began moving money away from her event back to my name. That single click was only the beginning of a storm they never saw coming. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. The kettle clicked off as dawn drew a thin line of light across my counter. Steam lifted from my mug, thinned, and vanished. I opened my laptop, the same one I use for budgets and birthday collages. One new message. No subject. Sender Seraphine. I waited a breath. Then I clicked. Mom. We finalized the guest list with Andrew's family. Best if you don't come to the ceremony. We'll have a live stream link so you can watch. Okay, it'll be just like being there. LOL. I read it again slower. No, dear Mom, no, please. The part that stung wasn't the seat I lost, it was the role they thought they could reduce to a hyperlink. Mother of the bride traded for a login. My fingers found the keys by memory. I typed, "I'll be there." I watched the words glow with heat I didn't trust. Then I pictured myself walking in and making the day small by making a scene. I pressed backspace. Each soft tap felt like returning something borrowed. When the line was empty, my hands were steady. I typed 4 new words. Sure. Enjoy your big day. I sent it. No exclamation points, no questions. The silence that followed didn't hurt. It clarified. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, a pickup coughed awake. Somewhere 2 streets over, a dog gave its morning speech about squirrels. The ordinary sounds put my feet back on the floor of my life. I named 5, I could hear 4. I could see 3, I could touch. Sun inching over the fence. The chip in the blue bowl. The sticky note that says trash day. The cool ceramic. The wooden chair. The pen. Images rose quick and clean my heels, clicking down the law firm hallway before sunrise. A boarding pass corner I never tore after buying a midnight ticket when Seraphine called crying. A Thanksgiving card I signed and never mailed because the apology I wanted didn't arrive. Not melodrama, just proof. I've been the person who shows up even when the door is only half open. I am not a martyr. I am a mother who has confused access with love more times than I care to count. That ends now. I rinsed the mug and set it upside down to dry. A rule formed like a path after 2 steps. If my presence is negotiable, my effort is negotiable. I do not finance my own erasure. I do not buy a front row seat to a life that asks me to stand outside the door. From the hall closet, I pulled down the binder I keep for documents that matter. Mortgage records, retirement statements, a tab for family. Where I've saved receipts, I never called gifts, because that felt like keeping score. Numbers don't flatter and they don't lie. Paper clears the fog. The calendar said 3 weeks until Santa Ynez. The vineyard I'd seen only in photos would have oaks and pale buildings and a breeze that moves like someone smoothing a tablecloth. My name wouldn't be on the escort cards. That was fine. My name was on something more stubborn, the contract that ties payments to dates. I wasn't angry. I was awake. My phone vibrated 3 times. I didn't pick it up. A breath is cheaper than a regret. I opened a blank page and wrote a list titled, "What I Control." My words, my money, my time, my door. Under that, my peace. In the black screen's reflection, I saw a woman with silver that refuses to hide and eyes that finally looked like mine. My late husband used to set a coffee mug out for me when he left early, even on days we argued. Small rituals over big speeches. My reply this morning wasn't a scene, it was a ritual. A boundary said without a bruise. I slid the binder back into the closet and straightened the hangers, because order makes room for breath. I washed the blue bowl and put it at the front of the cabinet, even though the chip shows, maybe because the chip shows. Not everything marked is ruined. Sometimes the mark is proof a thing has been useful and loved. Before I closed the laptop, I read the email once more. I noticed the lowercase LOL. I don't think she meant cruelty. She meant ease. But ease that erases someone isn't ease. It's neglect with a soft face. I clicked archive, not delete. I'm not pretending it never happened. I'm refusing to let it ring all day in my pocket. Shoes on, list in my purse. The day outside was the same Tuesday as before. The difference was me. Tomorrow I would move money, not my mouth. I would let process carry what my voice no longer needs to lift. I would be the adult I've always been this time on my own behalf. I locked the door, then unlocked it to test the habit, then locked it again. Sun warmed the robin's egg hood of my car. I slid into the seat and set both hands where they belong. Some lines you draw once, some you redraw until they feel natural. This one I drew and kept. Back inside, I wrote a note for the fridge call bank 900. I don't leave pep talks, I leave logistics. Logistics turn feelings into choices. Choices turn into days you can live with. On the counter sat the pen I use at work. I filled forms so other people could keep moving. School packets, lease renewals, insurance appeals. Tomorrow I would fill one for myself. I walked room to room, touching chair backs and frames the way you pat a pocket to be sure the keys are there. The house answered refrigerator hum vent sigh clock tick. I don't need everyone to understand me. I turned off the lamp. The screen ghosted my reflection. I nodded and closed the lid. Tomorrow at 9:12, I would enter the bank with a folder and a steady beat. Quiet isn't surrender. It's control. The automatic doors sighed when I stepped into First Federal. Weekday light slid across the tile like water. I held a slim folder ID, the wire reference printout, a yellow sticky with 2 questions. The wall clock read 9:12 a.m. I took a ticket B243 and sat where I could watch the screens without staring at anyone. Numbers clicked forward. Customers moved in Loop's deposit notary card issues. The tellers worked like a choir, quiet hands, the same 3 phrases in different keys. Forms have always treated me more fairly than people when feelings run hot. Paper doesn't flinch. I breathed the way I teach myself now, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. I wasn't here to plead. I was here to perform a task. B243. The manager's voice was even the smile professional. His nameplate read Kevin Ortiz. He offered a seat in a small glass room and closed the door. "How can I help you today? I need to cancel a pending wire," I said. $50,000. It's tied to a contract with a California venue. Here's the reference number. I slid the sheet forward and kept my hands folded. No extra story. The facts were enough. Kevin scanned, typed, nodded. "We can attempt a recall. There's a timing window. Let me confirm your identity and the status." He passed me the pad for my signature, then my driver's license. He read the disclosures in steady phrases. I initialed where the little flags weighted blue triangles like tiny sails pointing me downriver. I named what I could see the pen weight, his neat notes, the soft whir of the printer. I kept my feet flat and my shoulders low. I stayed inside my window of tolerance. "Good news," he said. "Funds have not been released. We can cancel outright. There may be a small processing fee. That's fine." The words felt like laying a brick where a hole had been. He printed 2 pages, dated them, and turned the top copy for me to sign. The line held my name. I signed it as if I were signing for myself for the first time. A hinge clicked inside the day. Kevin handed me a receipt and emailed a confirmation to the address on file. I checked that the reference number matched the sheet in my folder, then slid both into a clear sleeve behind a tab labeled Family. As I stood, my phone buzzed. A text banner scrolled from Malis Drew, the planner I had spoken with twice. Program and seating update, mother's speech TBD depending on final payment. Front row seating reserved for primary donors per family guidance. I stared at the words until they stopped ringing. Then I took a screenshot. I saved it, duplicated it to a cloud folder, and renamed it with today's date and time. No reply. The message had done me a favor. It said out loud what I had felt, that my chair and my voice were being priced. At the printer by the wall, Kevin waited with another page. "For your records," he said. "Thank you," I answered. Could you stamp the time he did, and the purple ink bled a soft sun around the numbers. I slipped the stamped page with the receipt. The folder had a modest weight now. I sat in the lobby a moment longer and organized my phone. New folder, evidence subfolder wedding. Inside, I dropped the stamped receipt image, the email confirmation, and the screenshot from Malis. I added a short note to myself, language to remember, primary donors, depending on final payment. I didn't sharpen the words. I filed them. Outside, Austin heat lifted as the doors opened. Noon wasn't far. The parking lot smelled faintly of hot rubber and barbecue smoke. I paused in the shade and thought about the easiest trap explaining yourself to people who already did the math and liked the result. My mother taught me to thank clerks by name. My husband taught me to keep copies. Life taught me that quiet can be a lever. Kevin stepped out with a to-go cup and waved once. I waved back and buckled in. Money had moved. My mouth had not. The day felt taller. Traffic on the feeder road stitched toward the highway. I kept both hands on the wheel and named the next step, put everything where it belongs. At the first red light, I dictated a reminder, create corresponding folder on home laptop, print backup, store in binder under family. The phone buzzed again. Another line from Malis. Once balance clears, we can finalize your remarks and placement. I let the banner fade. Then I forwarded the thread to my private email and archived it. At home, I would scan the receipt and tuck the papers behind a tab that doesn't brag. I would label the envelope with today's date and the words, cancellation confirmed. I would not rehearse speeches or write a paragraph that begins after all I've done. The folder was enough. The act was the sentence. I thanked the universe for working pens and clear policies and people who read their disclosure scripts. Systems aren't warm, but they are fair when you meet them prepared. I pulled out of the lot. I breathed again, 4 and 4, held 6 out, and felt order return when the door closed. Before sunset, there would be a knock at my door. I felt it the way you feel the weather change when a front moves through Texas pressure, then wind, then the creak in the fence. Family doesn't come to debate terms. They come to rescue a plan that no longer floats. I took the long way home past the park where toddlers tried to make kites from grocery bags. The sky said maybe. The bags said not today. I smiled and drove on. The porch light timer clicked, even though the sun hadn't given up yet. I knew the weight of those steps my son's tread a little faster when he was ready to argue. I let him stand one breath longer than habit before I opened the door. The screen held a square of heat between us. Mom, this isn't a big deal, he started no hello. Guest count is tight. It's an intimate thing. Don't make it harder than it is. He looked past me into the hall as if the house could be persuaded for him if I would not. I held the frame with my left hand palm flat and listened. Not the old nodding. Not the quick, promised fix, just listening. He went on about Andrew's family liking neat lists and small circles. Tradition, he said. I let the words stack until they showed their shape. Inside me, the old role tried to wake the fixer, the warmer of cold rooms, the payer of deposits. It rose like a muscle memory you don't know you've rehearsed, and I felt the pull to soothe him. I set my heels heavier on the floorboards. The reflex passed. You're asking me to finance a wedding I'm barred from attending. I said quiet. It wasn't a question. He winced. It's not like that. Andrew's parents are covering most of it. They just want things neat. If you help, we can revisit your seat and the program. Nothing's set in stone. His voice softened on revisit the way people lower their tone when they want you to buy a thing you don't need. I saw the deal he was offering money first mother later. The price tag hung where the chair should be. I moved my right hand to the knob, not to slam, just to locate the line I stood on. Get out of my house, I said. Not loud, even. He froze, blinked as if I'd switched off gravity. Mom, I said what I meant. I eased the door toward its frame. The room narrowed to the hum of the air vent and the small scrape of the rubber strip on wood. He stared at me, waiting for the old version of me to rush in and make this easier. When she didn't arrive, he stepped back onto the porch. You always make everything about you, he added, as if that might conjure her. The door closed. I put my forehead to the cool wood for 3 breaths. The refrigerator clicked on. My heart matched it and then led. I did not pace. I did not explain to the empty room how we got here. I walked to my desk, pulled the binder labeled venue, and laid it flat. Tabs like quiet flags. Deposit receipt tucked under the first clip calendar taped inside the cover. I flipped to the signature page. Authorized signatory Rowena Vale. Below it, a clause I remembered only as a feeling. Until now, all directives and approvals shall be made by the contract holder. That was my handwriting on the line that made me the only person who could move the levers. Not power for the sake of winning authority for the sake of order. I read the clause twice and slid a small sticky note to mark it. I copied the exact sentence onto an index card in block letters so I wouldn't reach for adjectives later. Paper keeps me honest. At the window, he was still on the porch texting with the posture of someone building a case. I left the curtain where it was. I am not a camera. I am a lock. I returned to the desk. I flagged the sections on payment schedule and approvals yellow for money, blue for authority. I stacked my ID, the bank receipt from this morning, and the stamped cancellation confirmation. I wrote one line on a clean page, email in the morning with clause, request written acknowledgement, tools not tears. The porch light clicked on a little early. I turned it off. Tonight didn't need theater. The day had already done its work, a door closed without a slam, a sentence on paper that would matter more than anything shouted. He knocked once more, softer. I didn't open. Someone can love you and still step back. Someone can be your child and still be wrong. The knob was cool under my palm and then warm. Boundaries have a temperature. I put the binder back in the drawer and locked it. I shut the laptop so I wouldn't draft something in the heat that I'd regret in the cool. In the morning, I would send 3 sentences and a photograph of a clause. No apologies, no history, no grief dressed up as law. I made tea. Steam slowed. Outside dusk, thin to the kind of blue that erases detail but sharpens edges. I sat at the table and let my body memorize how this felt firm, not hard. Sad, not broken. By the time the streetlights took over, the porch was empty. I washed the cup and set it upside down. My next move was not a speech. It was a line in an email and the right attachment. In the morning, only one signature would matter. By 8:03 a.m., the venue's reply would sit in my inbox with my name in bold. I set a reminder for sunrise clause photo. Subject line, contract authority, confirm. On a sticky, I drafted 3 lines so I wouldn't wander. Per Section 8, contract holder approves and directs. Please confirm receipt and update records to reflect approvals must be in writing from me. Thank you. No thunder, just weather moving on schedule. In the bedroom, I laid out a blouse and ironed the cuff. The folder went into my tote by the door. The lamp made a small circle that required nothing from me. I wrote one sentence in my notebook, I won't purchase a place at my own table. The period looked like a seed. I closed the cover. I checked the lock once, slowly. The dark was ordinary again. So was I in the best possible way. At 8:03 a.m., the Vineyard's letterhead opened on my screen. One line sat in bold above the signature block. Per the contract, directives and approvals must come from Ms. Rowena Vale. Clean font, clear authority. My shoulders dropped their unnecessary inch. I read the paragraph twice, then matched numbers the way I do at work. Contract ID and the email contract ID on my scanned copy, same sequence, same renewal suffix. I saved the PDF to evidence, wedding, contract auth, and added the time in the file name because clocks tell stories later. I clipped the binder open beside the keyboard so paper and pixels agreed. Reply all is a small button with large consequences. I pressed it and typed one sentence. Please process any changes only upon written instruction from me, the contract holder. I attached the signed page and the Vineyard's confirmation, then read the thread top to bottom. Send. I gave it 60 seconds and then placed a call. Orson Keene, a calm voice answered. This is Rowena Vale, I said. I'm calling to confirm receipt, and the phrase, written instruction from Ms. Vale. Confirmed, he said. Our system shows authority with you. No substitution without your consent. We verified my address, the date, and the last 4 digits tied to the account. I wrote the start and end times in my notebook. We'll await your direction, he added. The call lasted 58 seconds. The inbox chimed. From Mailus looping and the latest seating plan for review, a PDF thumbnail bloomed. I clicked. Tables as tidy circles, names in tidy squares. I zoomed into the family table. Beneath the header, my square read, Contributor, Rowena Vale. Contributor. I didn't argue with the screen. I captured the insult with a screenshot that included the file name and timestamp, saved it to Evidence, Wedding, Seating, and returned a reply. Correction title should read, Mother of the Bride. Please revise. I attached the screenshot and the clause page again so the document could learn its facts. Minutes later, a cushion arrived. We're keeping the footprint intimate, Mailus wrote, and acknowledgement lines are flexible. We so value your support. I watched the language try to move me from noun to vapor. I replied with 2 lines. As contract holder, I approve directives in writing. Titles should reflect factual relationships. I saved the thread as a single PDF, Evidence, Wedding, Seating, Guerrero 1 PDF, because threads change tone under pressure. On a card I wrote, Word drift acknowledgement versus mother. Paper makes drift visible. Grief pressed behind my sternum. I walked the block. Sun already high, a blue jay, heckling the pecan tree, a neighbor rolling a bin to the curb. I practiced the line I would use all week, I will not negotiate presence. The words landed under my feet and steadied the sidewalk. Back at my desk, I forwarded Orson's confirmation to the vendor ops alias. Mailus had used deliveries, music cues, logistics. Please align all timelines and changes with the contract holder, I wrote. 1 sentence. Send. A subtle thing like moving a river 1 inch at its source. The whole downstream will feel it. I closed the seating plan and let the picture go. My chair at that table is not a thing I will purchase, negotiate, or beg into existence. If they want to rename a mother into a donor, they will have to do it without my money and without my consent. The binder slid back onto the shelf next to tax returns and appliance manuals. My chair glided home against the desk. I checked the locks of the day files, saved emails, sent notes, written breath even. By afternoon, their courtesy would arrive as public relations. I was ready for both. Truly so. At 1:14 p.m., a new subject line. We value your support. Inside sentences praised community and the joy of intimate ceremonies. A paragraph murmured that for a streamlined experience, families sometimes designate contributors. The word mother did not appear. I pressed forward, added it to the evidence chain with 2 tags PR language role erasure and filed it. Another ping. Orson again brief and useful. Per our call, all vendor timelines will require written approval from you. Beneath CC's multiplied beverages, lighting florist rentals. Addresses lined up under my name. Systems once aligned carry your choices further than a speech ever could. I sent 1 more note to the group, alias 1 stone at a time, acknowledge receipt. Refer to contract holder for changes. Titles on printed materials must reflect factual relationships. I signed my name each time, so there was no confusion about who was speaking. Then I let the screen rest. I watered the plant and stood where the light warmed the sill. The day had taken a shape that would hold. I didn't need anyone to clap. I needed the machinery to keep moving in the direction it had declared. I opened a new document labeled Next and typed a list for tomorrow call florist. Check refund timelines, draft 1-paragraph policy for myself about what I fund and what I do not. The list ended with a line that has no checkbox. Keep your peace. I shut the laptop. The binder's spine caught the light like a quiet metal. I set my tote by the door and straightened the mat with my toe. A life can stay simple while you do complicated things. If the world wants to sell me my own name, it will have to do it somewhere else. The subject line was tidy. We've updated the run of show. I didn't rush. I opened the email from Mailus, set a pen on my mouse pad, and let my breath slow to something that could read law. The PDF opened with a soft thunk. Columns, minutes, arrows. I clicked once to fit, twice to zoom, and waited for the type to sharpen. Midway down the page, 2 lines sat too close, like strangers pretending they weren't holding hands. Final payment 4:45 p.m. Directly under it, mother's speech. TBD 50 p.m. I felt nothing dramatic, just a precise cooling in my neck, as if a small window had been left open. I took a screenshot with the timestamp bar visible and saved it to evidence wedding timeline 01 PNG. Presents tied to money is not a misunderstanding. It is a policy. I replied with one clean question. Please confirm whether the speech slot depends on receipt of final payment. No adjectives. Send. While the wheel spun, I wrote the time in my notebook and underlined the words, depends on. Her cushion-landed talk of operational efficiencies flow guest comfort, the soft furniture of emails that move people around without admitting movement. No denial, just steam. I pasted the contract holder clause again and added a single request. Separate all financial milestones from titles and roles. I renamed the folder Evidence Seeding Timeline. I dragged the crop, the thread, and a note I wrote for myself. They are testing whether I will rent my voice to sit together. Files make a spine when spines are required. Another ping new sender. Isolde Crane. The body read like a press release intimate footprint gratitude for my support and a suggestion that acknowledgement could be handled in the printed program notes. Her signature block glittered with boards and charities, a chandelier of causes. My eyes found the phrase that mattered, donor acknowledgement. I highlighted the sentence and copied it into a card alongside 2 other words, mother of the bride. I let the comparison sit without heat. Then I took a screenshot of her paragraph and saved it as prdonor-ac.png. My reply was 2 sentences, the exact length of a line drawn. Titles should reflect factual relationships. Please remove any reference to donor acknowledgement and list my title as Mother of the Bride wherever applicable. I CC'd Malus for operational sync. No sermon. I have learned that pillows absorb rage. They do not absorb facts. The planner tried to square the circle. We can keep acknowledgements flexible while honoring intimacy, she wrote, as if flexibility could hide the hinge. I answered with the clause once more, and a new line presence is not negotiable against payment of any kind. I pressed send and felt my pulse even out. Boundaries are cardiovascular. I closed the laptop and washed my mug. Water ran warm, then hotter. I said to the sink what I would not spend on the page. They are testing whether I will rent my place in my own child's day. The sentence made no echo. Good. I do not need an audience to tell the truth. Back at the desk, I compiled a single packet, the timeline crop. Isolde's paragraph, my replies. Packet, a payment, vs presents.pdf. I uploaded it to the cloud and backed it up to an external drive that whirs like a small, obedient cricket. I added a cover note to myself, if they push, don't speak. Show. The rest of the afternoon was quiet work. 2 invoices at my job needed approvals. I moved them along. A neighbor texted about a community yard sale. I said I had folding tables. The ordinary stayed ordinary, which is a kind of mercy when other things try to tilt. Near 4, I set a calendar tag, await revised timeline. I knew what the next proof would be. Not language, a picture. Images are hard to run from when they include your own name. At 5, the window light went gold, and the house smelled faintly of lemon oil from the cloth I'd used on the table. I closed the window, closed the laptop, and kept the folder close enough to touch, but far enough to forget if I wanted to. I want a life that does not orbit anyone else's decision. By the weekend, the before and after seating chart would say it louder than any press release ever could, and I would file that too, not to nurse the hurt, but to respect the record. A story is only as strong as the paper that holds it. I ate a late lunch at the counter, sliced apples, cheddar crackers, and made a small checklist on the back of an envelope. Compare older seating PDF to new, mark any title drift, note any change in my row. I circled 3 verbs, compare, mark note. Work has taught me that verbs decide outcomes. My phone buzzed twice and quieted. I did not reach for it. Not every sound deserves a witness. When the mail arrived, I sorted it standing up. Utilities, a flyer, a return envelope from a charity I give to, because a woman once sent me a handwritten thank you. I put it in the drawer where I keep stamps and the 6th grade photographs I still haven't framed. Grief is a very organized house when you let it be. I stepped outside for 10 minutes and watched a delivery van nose down the block. The heat had a clean edge. Somewhere, a radio played a song I knew by heart and hadn't sung since before my husband died. I didn't sing it now. I just listened and kept my own time inside my ribs. Some days, that is all the music anyone needs. Before bed, I wrote note, keep records, keep grace, keep going. The phone pinged just after 8 on Saturday, a polite chime that could have been any neighbor's recipe or church reminder. It was a WeTransfer link from Mailus, seating revisions attached. I set my mug down, opened the laptop, and set a 20-minute kitchen timer. The rule was simple. Breathe first, read second. 2 charts opened side by side, version 3 and version 4, identical fonts and Vineyard green borders. In V3, my name sat at the head family table, the square that says this is where history lives. In V4, the table remained and I was heir. The rows shifted, cousins advanced a seat, the groom's uncle appeared from off-screen, and the chair that once held my name went blank. I took a layered screenshot, aligned the circles by the floral icon, and saved it, seating vs V4 PNG. I toggled to the file pane and looked for footnotes the way I look for typos in contracts, slow hunting for the small betrayals. Metadata told me the edit trail had passed through an account with initials IC. The comment layer half hidden wore the same initials. I clicked the bubble. The text landed like a hand on the back of my neck. Keep her off stage, potential disruption. 4 words and a dash enough to reduce a mother to a hazard label. A wedding is theater. I had been cast as a fire risk. My hands trembled. I laced my fingers until knuckles paled and said out loud once to make it true. This is data. Not an insult yet. Data can be filed, insults want to be fed. I exported the comment view with the timestamp bar visible and named it comment keeperoffstage.png, then placed it into evidence wedding seating. I added tags role, erasure risk language, internal note. The folder stacked like bricks. My email to Mailus was 2 lines, the exact width of accountability. Please clarify which stakeholder requested my removal from the family table. Rowena Vale contract holder. I removed adjectives twice before I sent it. Precision is the decency we owe even to people who are unkind. Her reply arrived in under 5 minutes, quick enough to smell like fear, soft enough to read like velvet. We're managing space constraints and atmosphere, she wrote. We want to keep the footprint warm. No denial of the comment, no name for the stakeholder, just a cloud of tone. I flagged the thread, evidence risk lang, and let it sit. In my notebook, I wrote a private memo. They labeled me a disruption. That means I'm no longer invisible. I am dangerous to their narrative. The sentence steadied me. Stories are scaffolds. Remove the wrong beam and the facade trembles. I encrypted the seating folder cloud and USB both and watched the blue bar crawl toward 100%. Not for revenge yet, for timing. A truth released too soon becomes gossip. A truth released at the right hour becomes a lesson. The kitchen timer chimed. I let it ring twice and stop. Outside evening pressed warm against the windows. Crickets sawed at the edges of the yard. I closed the laptop and stepped onto the porch. I counted the breaths it took to hear the second set of crickets, the ones farther down the block. 4 tonight. Good. The neighborhood still worked. They think this is about where I sit. I thought the boards under my feet holding the weight of things I will never say. They have no idea I've already stood up. Back inside, I made a list on a yellow card titled Monday. 1 draft note to venue attaching before-after comparison. 2 ask for written confirmation of any seating change requests, including who made them. 3 move the refund timeline inquiry to the top of the stack. 4 prepare a single-page summary for myself. payment versus presence versus title. I placed the card under a magnet on the fridge where grocery lists used to live when my children were small and hungry and everything felt solvable with pasta. A second look at the PDFs revealed a small footer change file owner, switched from the planner's account to a shared Crane family drive. I saved another copy with that detail highlighted. I poured water over a tea bag and watched color thread outward. Grief does that one leaf, one silence steeped long enough to tint the whole cup. I sipped once and put it down. I need a clear head more than a warm hand. A text from an unknown number arrived. We appreciate your generous support. We're trying to make the day seamless. No name, only the groom's family domain in the address preview. I did not respond. Seamless is another word for silent when used by people who want you to disappear. I checked the locks on the doors even though it was still early, a ritual more about choice than fear. Inside the quiet, the refrigerator hummed and the AC clicked. I wrote one last line in my notebook. I will not purchase a place at a table I set. The period looked like a small stone. I kept it. On the porch again, cicadas now louder than the crickets, I let the air settle my face. I looked at the sky's dull copper and thought about stages. People imagine stages are steps and lights and applause. They forget the stage is also the door you open for yourself and the line you refuse to cross. I had opened mine this week. I would not cross back. By Monday, their curated image would crumble under one leaked photo, not to scorch the earth, just to light a single corner. Truth once documented tends to walk upright alone now. The image showed a table that erased me and a note that feared me. Sunday settled over the house like a sensible shawl. The porch lantern clicked on by itself, throwing a small circle on the steps. I wiped the desk, stacked the binder, and opened the folder named Evidence Wedding Seating. Files waited with their square little faces. I took one slow breath and then another. The air outside was warm and a little sweet, the kind of Austin evening that carries lawn sprinklers and distant laughter. Inside, the cursor pulsed like a heartbeat I could set by. My phone buzzed once. Unknown number. A cloud link blinked into the screen and sat there like a stranger at the end of the pew. I didn't touch it. I waited for the second ping, the tiny reveal of a contact card. Leora. I had not seen her since she helped Seraphine move last spring. I texted one word, verified, and watched 3 dots appear. Yes. Open. It matters. I clicked. A screenshot filled the display, a vendor chat window with a pale background and tiny avatars. The sentence was short, spare, and familiar in its varnished cruelty. Keep her offstage family dynamics are messy. The timestamp matched the hour the seating file changed on Saturday. I felt my pulse rise, but only into focus. I saved the image as vendor chat keep her off stage PNG and slid it into the evidence folder where it belonged next to comment keep her off stage PNGNT. I traced the trail like a bookkeeper. Message headers, origin domain, the little alphanumeric string that identifies a thread. I exported the metadata into a text file and typed a single note beneath it. Intentional silencing. Data first, feeling later. The order matters if you want to move mountains without shouting at them. Another attachment loaded thumbnails of seating version 3 and version 4 from someone's cache. I enlarged them and checked their hashes against my copies. They aligned exactly as if the files themselves were tired of being moved around to say the same quiet thing. I added both to the folder and labeled them clearly because clarity is a kindness to your future self. A soft knock came at the door. When I opened it, Leora stood on the porch in a denim jacket, palms open, a small flash drive glinting like a coin in her hand. The lantern washed her face in amber. I didn't want to text this without coming, she said. I can't watch them erase you. She didn't apologize for anyone. She didn't ask me to be generous. She just let the sentence sit between us until it stopped hurting. We sat at the kitchen table, 2 women in a clean surface. I plugged in the drive. No speeches. We cataloged files in silence the way nurses tend a chart, steady, exact, humane. I'm here because it's wrong, she said finally. Not because I expect you to fix it. I nodded. "This stays between contracts and calendars," I said. "No public scene. The truth doesn't need a megaphone, it needs a spine." I poured tea. We wrapped hands around heat that did not ask for permission to be warm. If my presence is negotiable, I said so is my effort. Leora considered that and smiled without brightness. "That's not revenge," she said. "That's balance." I felt something ease in my jaw. Balance is a word you can stand on. We built packet B silencing intent.pdf. The chat screenshot, the seating, AB, the timestamps, the briefest commentary possible. File names stacked on the screen like bricks in a low, patient wall. I signed the cover page with the same neat block letters I use at work. Somewhere outside, a neighbor's chimes knocked the hour into pieces. We did not rush to collect them. She asked very gently if she should talk to Seraphine. I shook my head. "No triangulation," I said. "We'll let systems and consequences speak. It's an older woman's privilege to choose a clean road even when a dramatic one is offered." Leora didn't push. She pressed the flash drive into my palm and squeezed my fingers once. "You are not a disruption," she said. "You're the mother." The sentence landed like a chair set where it always should have been. At the door, the porch lantern made a warm tunnel out to the sidewalk. "Thank you for coming as yourself," I said. "No banners." She laughed softly. "I brought the right shoes then." She stepped into the Austin night and disappeared between the trees, leaving the air stirred and kind. I encrypted the packet in the cloud and on a labeled USB. The progress bar crept forward a small blue caterpillar. I set a morning reminder, forward packet venue plus planner. Then I wiped the table dry where our mugs had left faint rings, because finishing is as important as beginning. Around the house, the small machines did their faithful jobs. The lantern clicked off at 10, the thermostat settled, the refrigerator hummed its simple hymn. I looked at the closed laptop and felt no need to open it again. I didn't need to shout. Tomorrow I would forward 4 files in one sentence. Please align all actions to the contract holder. Process over pleading, paper over noise. My heart slowed to the rhythm of steps on a path I had chosen on purpose. By noon, my reply all would land like a gavel, not to punish, but to call the room to order. They had written a note to keep me off stage. Tonight, I set a light on my porch and chose the stage I could control: a chair, a table, a truth, with a date stamp. The chain carried a single correction process over pleading, and that at last was enough to let me sleep. I set an 8 o'clock alarm USB by my keys, a small promise tonight. I woke at 6:30 and let the kettle speak first. Tea, not coffee, steady, not sharp. I wiped the desk with my hand, squared the binder, and opened the cloud folder. Evidence waited in tidy rows. Packet a packet, B seating, V3Vs, V4, vendor chat. Keep her off stage. I breathed in for 4, out for 6, and rehearsed one line firm, not furious. The subject line came clean: re-clarification, re-seating, alterations, and vendor messaging. I typed it twice, attached packet B and the seating comparison. The cursor blinked. I pictured my porch lantern from last night and set the tone to match it, constant and unafraid. One click moved it from my world to theirs. Recipients: Seraphine Isolde, Malus, the venue florist caterer, AV team, and the dotted vendor string. I wrote a single line: "Please review enclosed files. I will await written acknowledgement of receipt by noon." Then I pressed send and watched the small envelope icon lift and vanish. Silence in a house has a sound: the refrigerator's patience, the air vent's soft discipline. I watered the porch ferns and listened to Monday buses, footfalls, the mail truck's door. Inside, blue dots appeared as red receipts. No replies, just proof of eyes. The first crack came from the planner. "We regret the miscommunication." Malus wrote a sentence that whistles while backing away. No denial. The chat and the seating images were too plain. I replied with a single line: "Please direct further communication to written channels." I let the thread sit. A second ping landed where junk mail goes to hide. My spam folder displayed an automated invoice with a subject in red: "Payment failed." The venue bounced the second installment. They needed the $50,000 I refused to wire. The story about family harmony was a mask for a spreadsheet. I dragged the invoice into the thread and added one sentence above it. This appears relevant to prior requests regarding support. The quotation marks did more work than any paragraph. Read receipts rolled in fast and anxious blue chorus. Vendors replied, confirm funds. Need guarantor by EOD. Impacts floral hold. The polite facade fractured into practical phrases. No one mentioned mothers. Everyone mentioned money. The ping from Seraphine took longer to arrive. When it did, the greeting used my first name, trying for softness. Mom, she wrote, as if remembering halfway through this got out of hand. She offered a word stack, stress, moving pieces, Andrew's parents' optics, the wish to keep things peaceful. She did not reference the chat, the comment that called me a disruption, or the timeline that stapled my speech to a payment. I read it once and closed the window. Vendors kept working the problem in public as vendors must. Until funds clear, we advise holding production. Who approves adjustments? Orson from the venue entered the thread and quoted the clause with my name in it. He did not take a side. The contract did that for him. Systems that once ignored me were learning my language. I sent my last line because every scene needs a curtain. I will not be a conditional presence. Then I archived the thread. The key click felt like a latch, small and final. The house held quiet the way good wood holds polish. Sunlight slid across the kitchen tiles and drew a square. No one passing on the sidewalk would know a war had ended here. I rinsed my cup and set it to dry the way my mother set a ladle across a pot to keep a simmer calm. I opened the lockbox, laid the drive inside, and turned the key. My heart did not race. It meted out its beats like a gavel measured deliberate, not for show. I wrote a note in the calendar on the counter, noon met. Thread closed. When the phone finally buzzed again, it was not a reply but a pivot. A new message from the planner carried a different note. We value your support, she wrote, and would love to acknowledge your generosity in the program. I read it with a clarity earned over 6 decades. Acknowledgement was a ribbon around a check that would never be written. I filed it with letters that tell on themselves. By late morning, the blue dots dwindled. A vendor asked to schedule a call. I sent back the clause and a polite refusal. Written channels only. My tone neither rose nor sagged. I took a second cup of tea to the porch and let the steam drift into the shade. Across the street, a little girl practiced riding with training wheels while her father jogged a hand on the seat. She laughed when she wobbled. He laughed too. Training wheels come off. When you're ready, I thought. Boundaries too. Noon arrived as surely as honest work. A final receipt pinged from the venue acknowledged. No apology. Just the clock closing its circle. I marked the time in my notebook and underlined it once. Then I opened a new page and wrote tomorrow's task, review any revised materials. Say little, move nothing. They would not sleep well today. I would sleep. The porch lantern would click on at dusk as it always does, and I would read a few pages of the library novel. I would not check my phone. I would not rehearse a speech I would never give. I had built the only speech that mattered into the paper trail. That afternoon, they tried a different tactic, guilt, wrapped in apology. But for this hour, the air was clear, the floor under my feet felt honest, and the ring left by my cup dried into nothing. Silence had rattled them more than shouting ever could. The feed turned mean before lunch. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years tagged me under photos of pastel bridal robes, typing little knives like she likes control and donor energy. I did not answer. I noted the handles, the timestamps, the tiny arrows that said seen. When strangers peered in, I let them. When family performed for them, I let that too. Letting can be a form of gathering. I opened the platform's export page and queued a download of every thread that used my name. The progress bar crept while the kettle sang. I took screenshots of the worst lines, added URLs, and saved hash values like I was canning peaches for winter. A woman can stock a pantry in many ways. Today, mine was made of files. Seraphine texted at 1:17, "Can we talk? This is getting blown up." I answered, 1 hour. Neutral ground. I chose a coffee shop off South Congress where the chairs never scrape loudly, and the light makes people tell the truth without meaning to. I sat in the corner, back to the wall pen and small notebook ready. My phone stayed on, do not disturb. She arrived in a cloud of perfume and rehearsal words. This is all a misunderstanding. She started sliding into the seat. The planner overstepped. The guest count is tight. The optics. She trailed off, checking the door as if an audience might file in and applaud. I let the old reflex rise, the one that wants to soothe to pay to make the road smooth, and then I let it pass like a Texas dust devil that loses interest. Did you tie my speech to the final payment? I asked. No heat, just the question. It's not like that, she said quickly. It's about flow. If you could just help so we can put this behind us. I placed a single sheet on the table. The cropped timeline block, final payment, 4:45 p.m. stacked above mother's speech, TBD 5:00 p.m. Paper doesn't tremble. This is not flow, I said. This is leverage. Her mouth softened the way it did when she was 16 and wanted the car. Mom, please. You know how Andrew's family is. They're traditional. If you support us, I can make sure mother of the bride is not a seat you sell me, I said. The sentence felt like opening a window. If my presence is negotiable, so is my effort. I did not lean in. I did not lower my voice. I let the words sit between us the way truth sits solid, plain, unadorned. She tried one more shape. What if we put you in the program notes, or a toast at the rehearsal dinner? A back row seat is still titles reflect facts, I said. I won't finance disrespect. Outside, a cyclist coasted by the bell, a small silver note. Inside, the espresso machine hissed like a warning I didn't need. Silence yawned between us. In it, I remembered middle school science fairs, her braids, the broken shoelace I tied with cold fingers, while the gym doors opened to December air. Love is not a ledger, but it leaves records. I stood first. I left cash for my tea. Take care of yourself, I said, and meant it the way you mean it when someone is walking a road you can't fix for them. She swallowed, didn't stand, didn't reach. I stepped into the heat. At home, I logged the meeting in a plain text file, date, location, summary, exact phrasing of the offer and my reply. I added it to the evidence folder and closed the laptop with a hand that no longer shook. By late afternoon, the threads online had multiplied, but my breathing did not. I brewed mint tea and watched the light move across my kitchen tile. A life can be both smaller and freer in the same hour. Before evening, I set an alarm for tomorrow and cued the voicemail tab on my phone. The venue manager had promised to confirm one more time the clause that put my name in the only place it needed to be. I placed the printed timeline back in its folder and slid the folder into the drawer. I stood at the sink and let the faucet run until it cooled. When the water turned clear as glass, I turned it off. Some things you learn to do without performance. Some truths do their own speaking once you stop explaining. I walked the block as the sky turned bruise blue. Neighbors waved. No one knew a border had shifted in my chest. Back home, I labeled a flash drive and copied packets, timelines, chats, notes. I locked it with the house deed, not as a threat, but as a promise I won't bargain for a place that is mine by fact and love. Tomorrow would bring a message. I had chosen method not loud, not cruel, but final. The house was still when I rose, the kind of stillness that hums. I brewed tea and set the mug by my laptop, opening the evidence folder as sunlight stretched across the table. My phone lay face up on speaker mode. This wasn't about drama, just confirmation, clean and quiet. A red dot pulsed over voicemail. I tapped. From Orson Keene, Santa Ynez Estate. My thumb steadied on the mug as the automated voice gave the timestamp. I opened notes, typed S21 authorization confirmation, and pressed play. Good morning, Ms. Vale, Orson's voice said, smooth even through static. This is to confirm per your contract with Santa Ynez Estate. Only Ms. Rowena Vale can authorize changes to the event plan. Substitutions or alterations require her written instruction. We cannot accept directives from third parties without that consent. The message clicked to an end. I listened twice, marking the start and end times. Not for drama, just to have the words exact. I saved the audio as evidence, voicemail, S21 auth only. MP3 exported a brief transcript and filed it in the cloud. No commentary. Truth stands taller when you let it stand alone. In my notebook, I drew a small box and wrote, "Inside, system, recognizes me." That is enough. I closed the pen and exhaled slow, not victorious, just steady. The hallway closet held the shoebox I hadn't opened in years. I pulled it down, brushed off the dust, and carried it to the kitchen table. The cardboard smelled like cedar. Inside, old photos, a recital ribbon, a motel matchbook. Beneath them, an envelope with my name in a hand I knew better than my own. I slid the card free, careful with its cracked fold. My late husband's writing leaned forward like he was hurrying to meet me. "You deserve a front row to every joy," it read beneath the printed daisies. Not flowery, not long, just that. The groove of his pen was still pressed into the paper. I traced it with my finger and felt something inside me lock steady, not sentimental. Permission, not nostalgia. 3 small memories blinked through like old film, a courthouse bench where his pen broke and we laughed until the clerk did too. A humming motel ice machine while we ate grocery peaches at midnight. A thrift shop vase he said would make the kitchen brave. They didn't make me cry. They made me remember who I was before I began apologizing for existing. I set the card on the table and placed my phone on top of it, the transcript glowing. Law above, love beneath. Between them, me. I snapped a photo and stored it in a private folder called Keep. Some anchors don't belong on display. They belong close. I opened a blank document and typed a single-page policy for myself. Presence is not for sale. Support equals respect. Titles must reflect facts. I saved it as Support Policy Draft DX'd. Boundaries are quieter than speeches but firmer. A blinking cursor waited at the bottom of my Messages app. I typed my daughter's name, then erased it. The voicemail had said what her vendors needed to hear. The card had said what she never asked, but always should have known. Anything more would just be me trying to bend air into meaning. I closed the screen. I returned the card to its envelope, tucked it back in the box, and slid the box onto the closet shelf. Then I labeled a new USB drive, Authority, and Keep. Onto it went the voicemail transcript card photo and my policy. I locked the drive in the metal box beside the house deed. Not as threat, just stewardship. If anyone ever doubted why I didn't bend, I wouldn't argue. I'd open the box. By noon, sunlight slanted warm across the table. I slipped on my sandals and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked the same, but I felt aligned like a picture finally level on the wall. A colleague would meet me for lunch. He didn't know the details, only that he'd said, "Let me take you out of your head for an hour." I decided to let him. We sat by a window, soup and sandwiches between us, the world passing outside in its ordinary hum. When I told him about the voicemail, he nodded once slow. "Boundary," he said, stirring his soup, "is how love stays clean." I smiled, not because it surprised me, but because it fit. Back home, I filed the receipt in a folder called Life Kept. Maybe because not every file needs to be evidence. Some just prove you showed up. I glanced once more at the card's photo on my screen. "You deserve a front row to every joy." I whispered I do not as plea, but as fact. The house was still again in the way that hums. I slid the chair and square to the table and let the day move forward on its own hinge. Noon spilled through the cafe windows in calm panes of gold. Everett slid the water toward me, a quiet reminder to breathe. I put my phone face down. No emails at lunch. Not today. We began with small talk, the forecast, his granddaughter's recital, a clerk who still stamped in purple ink. The smallness eased the jaw I hadn't noticed I was locking. When he asked how I was, the question landed in a room I'd made ready. I didn't shout, I said. I moved money, then paper. I laid out the week, the halted wire, the contract, with my name, the reply all, in the silence that followed. No guesses at motive, only proof. He listened, spoon resting in his bowl. Then he said, Boundary is how love stays clean. The words set like a level plank. Clean love isn't a door slammed. It's a counter wiped, a ledger balanced. I tested the sentence against each moment of the week. It fit. I could love my daughter and refuse to rent my place in her life. "What does clean look like for you?" he asked. "A policy," I said. 1 page. What I give and when I give it, tied to respect. Support is not a ticket to proximity. Make it boring, he said. Boring stands in daylight. On a napkin, I wrote the plan draft policy. Separate accounts. Mail 1 final letter, close the ledger without flames. When the server brought soup, I paid for my half. He let me. We both knew what it meant. I am responsible for my meal, not theirs. At home, the light was flatter honest. I opened a document, support policy, Rowena Vale. I wrote the pillars I give without debt. I give where my relationship is named truthfully. I do not finance appearances. I do not purchase access. Presence is not a transaction. Dates, signature lines. Room for revision if the years require it. Tone audit. I removed adjectives with heat. I kept nouns you can photograph, receipts, contracts, certified mail numbers. The printed page looked steady, black type, wide margins. No exclamation points, pretending to be courage. I totaled what I had already given deposits, retainers, flights booked and canceled when plans shifted without me. I attached scans beneath a clear header, contributions to date, not accusation. Accounting. Both went into a cream envelope. I wrote my daughter's name in the hand she would remember from lunchbox notes, Seraphine. Under it, smaller, my own Rowena. I pressed the gum closed with my thumb and exhaled like an engine easing into idle. I photographed the envelope for my records, addressed a certified mail slip, and set it by the door with the outgoing bills. No drive-by speeches. The postal clerk would stamp. The system would carry it. Truth doesn't need an audience. In my notebook, I copied Everett's sentence, then added, "Mine boundary is how love stays clean. I do not purchase proximity." The lines looked like a spine. The house settled into its afternoon noises. Air unit, screen door, the kitchen clock's soft tick. I watched the envelope rest on my purse, pale and quiet. I had done what could be done without shouting. The next step wasn't theirs. It was mine. I checked the tracking form twice, not from doubt, but because proof lets the body stand taller. Number matched. Breath settled. The kettle hummed, tea steeped to amber. On the hall table, I placed a yellow note, mail first thing, so tomorrow's me wouldn't spend energy remembering or explaining. In the spare room, I gathered the last proofs into their folders, reply all thread, seating revisions, voicemail transcript support policy. The flash drive clicked into its case. I labeled the spine, wedding boundaries. Evening slid toward the blinds. I let the room go dim to see what held shape when the light changed. The envelope did. So did the sentence in my notebook. I washed the lunch bowl, dried it, and shelved it in its place. Small systems clean love. I don't need the world to agree with me. I need my home to. At the door, I checked the lock. The chain, the porch camera's tiny blue dot. Safety is a plan, not a feeling. I turned the lantern on and let its circle of light claim the step. Tomorrow wouldn't ask me to argue my worth. It would ask me to enroll in something that welcomed me without payment or permission. I could already hear the soft click of a confirmation. You're in. I slipped the envelope into my purse and felt its steady rectangle against the leather. I did not rehearse what might come back to me. I had already sent what mattered, the line, the ledger, the kind of love that does not smudge when touched. At 8 on the dot, I opened my laptop, the evidence folder on the left, a blank browser tab on the right. I typed Community Pottery, Austin. The cursor pulsed like a green light. No permission forms, no guest lists, just a schedule, a price, and a yes or no that belonged to me. I compared class times, read short bios, checked the bus line even though I'd probably drive. The Wednesday evening beginner wheel called to me, small class senior discount. No pretense. I reached for my own debit card. Not the card that bought deposit flowers, not the card they thought could buy a chair with my name on it. My card, my choice, my future. Enroll. The button felt ordinary under my finger. A spin, a pause. Then the page cleared, and 2 words bloomed at the top in friendly blue, "You're in." I stared until the shape stopped swimming. No bartering, no TBD, no pending final payment. A seat was simply offered and taken. I screenshotted the page and saved it to a new folder called Begin, Private Confetti. It was enough for me. I set the laptop to sleep, slid the cream envelope from yesterday into my tote, and walked to the post office. Texas heat rose off the parking lot in soft waves. Inside, the clerk weighed the letter and stuck on a green certified label. I kept my voice even. "Tracking, please." He handed me a receipt with a number I'd never memorize and didn't need to paper remembers for me. Back home, I printed the support policy I'd drafted with Everett's sentence ringing "Boundary keeps love clean." 1-page black ink date in the corner. I signed my name where it said, "Signature of Rowena Vale," and watched the letters settle. I scanned it, saved it as support policy signed .pdf, and slid the paper into a clear sleeve behind the ledger of what I had already given. An account closed without noise. At the bank, I asked for separate sub-accounts and removed every auto transfer with a wedding label. The rep was courteous, almost relieved to be useful. "Alerts by text and paper?" he asked. "Both," I said. "I like records." He smiled. "So do we." I walked out lighter, like after an overdue trim. I ate tomato soup alone at a small table by the window of a diner that knows how to be kind without asking questions. My phone stayed face down until it buzzed. "Mom, we can still figure this out, call me." I read it twice, heard the old reflex rattle its chain, then archived the message. In my notebook, I wrote 1 sentence, "Love without purchase." I let the soup do its ordinary work. At home, I cleaned the desktop the way you clean a closet when a season turns. Folders retitled themselves under my hands. Evidence closed. Begin open. I set a calendar reminder for the first class and another for a quarterly money review. Habits are scaffolding. You don't see them, but they hold the shape. In late afternoon, I drove to the Community Arts Center to see the room that would hold my hands honest. Shelves of clay and wrapped bricks, a ring of wheels like patient faces, a sink that had seen real life and didn't apologize for the stains. The instructor looked up and nodded without asking who I was. "Evening classes fill fast," she said. "I'm enrolled." I answered, surprising us both with how sure it sounded. She pointed to an empty cubby. "That one's free." I stood a moment, breathing the damp mineral air. The body knows when a place tells the truth. Clay doesn't care about titles. It remembers pressure water time and the steadiness of the hands that return. I could work with that. Back in my kitchen evening, poured across the counter in slow gold. I set the signed policy under a magnet on the fridge, placed the class confirmation beside the fruit bowl, and took out a simple white dish. I imagined its twin turning on a wheel next week. Nothing fancy, just round and sound the size of a daily apple. My husband's old card lived in the drawer nearby, the one that said, "I deserved a front row to every joy." Tonight, the front row was a chair at my own table. To the people who watch me from their own kitchens, from porches, from quiet rooms where the air is heavy with unsent words, you can love your children and refuse to rent your place in their lives. If your presence is negotiable, let your effort be negotiable too. Put what burns onto paper and let paper hold it. Spend your steadiness where it multiplies. The house exhaled. Somewhere down the block, a screen door snapped, and laughter followed it into the heat. I rinsed my cup and left it upside down to dry. Tomorrow I would check a tracking number, glance at a bank alert, and buy a cheap apron for Clay. The rest could do what it wanted. I turned off the kitchen light and left the porch lamp on low. On the counter, the phone glowed with the words from this morning still open where I'd left them. "You're in." 2 words small as a breath, wide as a door. I didn't need anyone to hold it. I walked through. I'm 63, and here's what I learned. Love stays clean when it has boundaries. If your presence is treated like a purchase, pay nothing, put it on paper, protect your peace, and spend your effort where it grows. You don't need a public fight to change your life. Quiet, documented choices are power enough. Tell me, what boundary have you delayed and what seat will you stop renting today? What class habit or community will you join for yourself? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or share where you're watching from. If it didn't tell me why, and if you want more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel.